She thought her appearance would scare the human. Sharing a bed was the last thing she expected. Yet, when mercenaries attacked the crashed pod, everything changed. Commander Thorne's hologram revealed a cross-species conspiracy threatening peace. As bullets flew, Alex's identity as Twilight emerged, transforming Liana's diplomatic mission into something deeper, a partnership that would bridge civilizations and hearts alike. The klaxons wouldn't stop. Liana's taloned fingers flew across the escape pod's control panel, each warning light casting an angry crimson glow across her bright orange scales. The small craft shuddered violently as it entered Zartax's thin atmosphere, the metallic tang of the alien world's air already seeping through deteriorating seals. Navigation offline. Communications offline. Life support at 17%. The pod's AI droned, its synthetic voice betraying no concern for these catastrophic failures. Liana's jaw tightened, the ridge of horn-like protrusions along her skull flaring slightly. A draconian stress response she'd spent years in diplomatic training trying to control. But now, plummeting toward an uncertain fate on a frontier world, her composure was fracturing. "Reroute auxiliary power to heat shields and stabilizers," she commanded, her voice deeper and more resonant than a human's could ever be. The translator implant at the base of her skull tingled as it processed her native draconian language into standard Terran English, a habit she maintained even alone, staying in practice for her diplomatic duties. Through the viewport, Zartax's surface rushed closer. Purple vegetation blanketed rolling hills, interrupted by the geometric shapes of the human settlement, a remote outpost, barely more than a speck on this vast and wild planet. Somewhere in that tiny collection of structures was the subspace relay she needed to contact her delegation and complete her mission. If she survived the landing, the peace treaty between the Draconian Imperium and the Terran Alliance hung by a thread. After centuries of uneasy coexistence and occasional skirmishes, both civilizations had finally recognized the futility of continued hostility. As junior cultural attaché to the Draconian delegation, Liana had devoted her life to this cause, defying her family's proud warrior tradition to become a diplomat. And now she was falling from the sky, her transport ship attacked by unknown assailants, her fellow diplomats' fates unknown. "Impact in 30 seconds, the AI announced. Liana secured her harness, closed her inner eyelids, the transparent membranes that protected draconian eyes in combat, and braced herself. Her heartbeat, naturally slower than a human's, seemed to thunder in her chest. Impact in 10 seconds. She thought of her clutchmate Verax, who had scoffed at her diplomatic posting. "Talking instead of fighting," he had said with typical draconian pride. "How will that bring honor to our lineage?" Impact in 3, 2, 1. The world became chaos. Metal screamed against stone. The restraint harness bit into Liana's shoulders, even through her formal diplomatic attire. Her head snapped forward, then back, slamming against the padded headrest with enough force to momentarily blur her vision. Emergency foam deployed around her, hardening instantly to prevent further injury. Then silence, broken only by the hiss of escaping pressure and the ping of cooling metal. Liana blinked, assessing her condition. Nothing broken, though her right shoulder throbbed where it had strained against the harness. The emergency foam began to dissolve, allowing her to reach the manual release for her restraints. With a grunt, she pulled herself from the pilot's seat. The pod's interior was bathed in the dull red glow of emergency lighting. Outside the cracked viewport, purple vegetation swayed in a gentle breeze. Zartax's sun was setting, painting the alien landscape in deepening shades of indigo. "System status," Liana commanded. No response. The AI was offline. She moved to the storage compartment, retrieving her diplomatic satchel, containing her credentials, personal effects, and most importantly, the data crystal entrusted to her by Commander Thorne before the evacuation order came. Whatever had happened aboard the transport, this crystal was essential to the peace negotiations. The pod's hatch released with a hydraulic sigh, revealing the full panorama of Zartax at dusk. The thin air carried unfamiliar scents, metallic, slightly sweet from the purple vegetation, tinged with the industrial output of the human settlement visible in the distance. Its lights were beginning to twinkle as darkness fell. Perhaps a half-day's journey on foot. Leanna stepped onto alien soil, her booted feet sinking slightly into the soft ground. She drew a careful breath, her specialized lungs filtering the air efficiently despite its thinness. The gravity was slightly lighter than she was accustomed to, giving her movements a subtle buoyancy. She performed a circuit of the pod, assessing the damage. The communications array was a twisted mass of metal. The heat shields had partially melted away, and the propulsion system had ruptured on impact. No chance of repairs with her limited tools. Her only option was to reach the human settlement and use their subspace relay. As she gathered what supplies she could salvage, a chill ran through her that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature. The crash wasn't right. The transport's automated defenses should have prevented any conventional attack from disabling it so completely. Commander Thorne's hurried instructions to take the escape pod with the data Crystal replayed in her mind. "Trust no one," he had said, his usually stoic expression betraying genuine fear. "Get this to the summit. Everything depends on it." Shouldering her pack, Leanna oriented herself toward the distant lights of the human settlement and began walking. The purple vegetation brushed against her scales, leaving faint traces of phosphorescent pollen that glowed softly in the gathering darkness. Above her, unfamiliar constellations emerged, celestial waypoints for a journey into uncertainty. Night fell completely by the time Leanna reached the outskirts of the settlement. Settlement was perhaps too generous a term. It was little more than a collection of prefabricated structures and repurposed transport containers, clustered around what appeared to be a central hub. A sign, illuminated by flickering blue light, identified the largest structure, the Last Jump Tavern and Supply. Leanna hesitated. Her appearance would cause a stir. Draconians rarely visited remote outposts like this. Her bright orange scales, the ridge of horn-like protrusions along her skull, her greater height and the natural predatory grace of her movements, all would mark her immediately as alien among the humans. In diplomatic circles, there were protocols, preparations. Here, she would be walking in cold. But she had no choice. Night had brought a biting chill, and her body temperature, naturally higher than a human's, was dropping. She needed shelter, communications, and information. Straightening her posture, a diplomat, even in crisis, Leanna approached the tavern. Music and voices spilled out whenever the door swung open, along with the mingled scents of food and intoxicants. She stepped inside. The conversation died immediately. Dozens of human eyes turned to her, widening with surprise and, in many cases, fear or hostility. The tavern's patrons were a rough-looking bunch: miners, transport pilots, and various frontier types, with a sprinkling of other species. A pair of spindly Iridians in the corner, a heavily armored Quarian behind the bar, its crystalline features catching the light. "I seek assistance," Leanna announced, her translator ensuring her words came out in flawless Terran English. "My vessel crashed. I require access to subspace communications." A heavy silence greeted her statement. Then a human male, bearded, weathered, with the insignia of a mining foreman on his jacket, stepped forward. "We don't want your kind here. Scale back," he said, his voice slurred from whatever he'd been drinking. "Crawl back to your Imperium." Leanna's diplomatic training took over. "I understand your concern. I assure you I'm a cultural attaché, not a warrior. My presence poses no threat to your settlement." "That right?" The foreman moved closer, emboldened by alcohol and the murmurs of support from his companions. Heard your lot burned 3 colony ships last sector over. Diplomatic accident, was it? Liana's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of distress she couldn't quite suppress. Those reports are unconfirmed and disputed, which is precisely why my mission to establish peaceful— Save it, another voice called from the crowd. The only good draconian is one that's far away from humans. The tension in the room was palpable. Liana saw hands moving toward weapons, saw the fear and hatred in their eyes. These weren't the educated diplomats and officials she typically dealt with. These were frontier people who knew draconians, primarily through propaganda and occasional violent encounters. I'll pay well for access to communications, she tried again, reaching slowly for her credential pouch to show she carried official currency. We don't want your blood money, the foreman growled, now close enough that Liana could smell the sour fermentation on his breath. We want you gone. Liana calculated her options. She could easily overpower this human, even without formal warrior training. Draconians were naturally stronger than humans, but violence would only confirm their worst fears about her species, and possibly bring the settlement's security forces down on her. Retreat seemed the only option, though where she would go in the cold night remained a question. Is this how humans demonstrate their much-vaunted hospitality? She asked, unable to keep a hint of draconian pride from her voice. Perhaps the treaty negotiations should be reconsidered, if this represents Terran diplomatic standards. The foreman's face flushed with anger. He reached for her arm, a grave offense in draconian culture, where touching without permission was reserved for family clutches or formal combat. Before contact was made, a new voice cut through the tension. That's enough, Briggs. The crowd parted to reveal a human male leaning against the bar. Unlike the others, he wore no mining or transport insignia, just simple, well-worn clothing that somehow failed to conceal an aura of quiet authority. His features were pleasant enough by human standards, symmetrical, with eyes the color of Zartax's twilight sky and short hair the shade of the planet's soil. He appeared calm, relaxed even, but Liana recognized the stance of someone ready to move quickly if needed. This isn't your business, Alex, the foreman, Briggs, growled. Making it my business, the man called Alex replied easily. Unless you want me telling Central Authority how you've been skimming ore samples before a say, don't think your corporate bosses would like that. Briggs' face contorted with fury, but he lowered his hand. You'll regret this, he muttered, before stalking back to his companions. Alex turned his attention to Liana, his gaze direct but not hostile, a refreshing change from the others. You mentioned a crash? My escape pod, Liana confirmed, maintaining diplomatic composure despite her relief at the intervention. My transport was attacked. Communications are destroyed. Alex considered this, head tilted slightly. The relay station's locked down after 1900 hours. Won't open till morning. He glanced at the still hostile crowd. You shouldn't stay here. I am aware, Liana said dryly. However, alternatives appear limited. A brief smile touched Alex's lips, an expression of genuine amusement rather than mockery. I have a place, not fancy, but it's secure and warm. Liana's inner eyelids flickered with surprise. This offer of shelter from a stranger, a human stranger, was unexpected. Her diplomatic training included extensive briefings on human customs and cultural norms. Such immediate hospitality toward a draconian was highly unusual, particularly in a frontier setting. Why would you assist me? She asked directly, draconian bluntness overriding diplomatic niceties. Alex shrugged. Because they won't, he said, nodding toward the hostile crowd. And because I don't judge people by their species. He straightened from his casual lean. Your choice. Stay and keep trying your luck with these fine citizens, or accept my offer. Liana weighed her options quickly. This human might have ulterior motives, perhaps seeking to steal her credentials or the data crystal. but he'd also prevented a violent confrontation. The tavern patrons were still watching with undisguised hostility, and night on Zartax would be dangerously cold for her physiology. "I accept your offer," she said formally, "and will compensate you appropriately." Alex waved a dismissive hand. "We can discuss that later." He nodded toward the door. "Let's go before Briggs finds his courage at the bottom of another bottle." They left the tavern together, stepping into the chill night air. The settlement looked even smaller from outside the tavern, perhaps 40 structures in total, most dark at this hour. Alex led the way along a path that wound between buildings, heading toward the outskirts. "You have a name?" he asked as they walked. "Liana," she replied, grateful her translator could approximate the complex harmonic tones of her true draconian name. Cultural attaché to the diplomatic envoy of the Draconian Imperium. "That's quite a title," Alex said, amusement in his voice. "Just Alex is fine for me." "You live in this settlement, Alex?" Liana asked, studying him more carefully now. He moved with purpose but remained relaxed, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings, behavior more reminiscent of a security operative than a typical frontier colonist. "I come and go," he replied vaguely. "Research, mostly." They reached the settlement's edge, where the prefab structures gave way to the native purple vegetation. A small, dome-shaped dwelling sat apart from the others, partially concealed by the alien foliage. It was more sophisticated than the utilitarian buildings of the main settlement. Its material had an iridescent quality that seemed to blend with the environment. Alex pressed his palm to a recognition plate, and a doorway appeared in the seamless surface. "Home sweet home," he said, gesturing for Liana to enter. The interior was compact but efficiently designed. A central living area contained basic furnishings, a small kitchenette, and a workstation with multiple displays currently in sleep mode. A partial wall separated this space from what appeared to be sleeping quarters. The temperature was pleasantly warm, clearly adjusted in anticipation of her arrival. Liana realized. "You are not a researcher," she stated, rather than asked, her gaze falling on details that told another story. The precision arrangement of the sparse possessions, the multiple exit points, the subtle but unmistakable outline of a weapon locker concealed in one wall. Alex smiled, apparently unsurprised by her perception. "Not exclusively," he acknowledged. "Let's say I wear different hats depending on the situation." He moved to the kitchenette. "Hungry? I don't have draconian cuisine, but I can offer protein synthesizer options." "Water would be sufficient," Liana said, still assessing her surroundings and her host. Alex filled a container with water and handed it to her, then gestured to a seating area. "Your shoulder's injured," he observed. Liana hadn't realized she'd been favoring her right side. "The crash harness," she explained. "Nothing significant." "I have a medical kit," Alex offered. "Includes some universal analgesics that should work with draconian biology." Liana hesitated, then nodded. Her diplomatic mission would require her at full capacity, and the pain was becoming more noticeable now that the immediate danger had passed. Alex retrieved a compact medical case and approached her with a small, handheld device. "Bioscanner," he explained before she could ask. "Standard frontier tech, may I?" At her nod, he held the device near her injured shoulder, studying the readout. "Minor soft tissue damage," he confirmed. "The analgesic should help, and I have a regenerative patch that will speed healing." As he applied the medical treatments with practiced efficiency, Liana studied him more closely. "Your knowledge of draconian physiology exceeds that of a typical frontier colonist." Alex's hands remained steady at her observation. "I told you. Research is part of what I do." He finished applying the patch, his touch clinical and respectful. "That should start working within the hour. The patch will dissolve when it's done." "Thank you," Liana said formally. The pain was already beginning to subside, replaced by a gentle warmth as the medication took effect. Alex returned the medical supplies to their case, then sat across from her. "So," he said, his tone conversational but his eyes intent. "What brings a draconian cultural attaché to Zartax in an escape pod?" Liana weighed her response carefully. Commander Thorne's warning, "Trust no one," echoed in her mind. But complete silence would only arouse suspicion. And this human had already shown himself to be different from the hostile tavern crowd. "I was aboard the diplomatic vessel, Sunscale, en route to the Peace Summit on Proxima Station," she explained. "We were attacked. The nature and origin of the attack remain unclear." "The treaty negotiations," Alex nodded. "It's been all over the feeds. First real chance for peace between Draconians and humans in what, 3 centuries? 2.7 centuries, Liana corrected automatically. "Since the Proxima incident." "Right." Alex leaned back, regarding her thoughtfully. "Lot of people don't want that treaty to happen." "On both sides," Liana acknowledged. "Centuries of mistrust cannot be erased with a single document." "True enough." Alex's gaze was penetrating yet not unfriendly. "But someone taking direct action against a diplomatic vessel, that's crossing a line." Liana's inner eyelids flickered briefly. This human was perceptive. "Indeed. Which is why I must reach communications as soon as possible. My delegation will need to know I survived, and I must warn them of potential threats." Alex nodded. "First thing tomorrow. I'll take you to the relay station." He paused. "Though I should warn you, Briggs isn't the only one around here with anti-draconian sentiments. The mining corporations have been pushing propaganda hard since the treaty talks began." "Because peace might mean fairer competition for resources," Liana surmised. "Exactly," Alex looked impressed. "War profits some people very nicely." An understanding passed between them, a shared recognition of the forces that kept their species in conflict despite the mutual benefits peace would bring. The moment was interrupted by a small chime from Alex's workstation. He moved to check it, scanning data on a display that oriented itself toward him, obscuring Liana's view of its contents. "Perimeter alert," he explained. "Just local wildlife. The native herbivores get curious about the dome sometimes." But something in his manner had changed. A subtle tension that hadn't been there before. Liana sensed he wasn't telling her everything about the alert, but chose not to press. She was, after all, keeping her own secrets. "You should rest," Alex said, turning back to her. "Tomorrow could be complicated, depending on how the locals react to you in daylight." Only then did Liana realize how exhausted she was. The crash, the confrontation at the tavern, the relief of finding unexpected sanctuary, all had taken their toll. Even with draconian endurance, she needed recovery time. "I accept your suggestion," she said formally. "Where may I rest?" Alex gestured to the sleeping area behind the partial wall. "It's all yours. I'll take the lounge chair out here." Liana frowned. "I would not displace you from your sleeping quarters." "Wouldn't be the first time I've slept in that chair," Alex assured her with a small smile. "Draconian guests, on the other hand. That's a first for me. I insist." The formality of the offer, and his willingness to inconvenience himself for her comfort, registered as significant to Liana. In draconian culture, offering one's personal space was a gesture of high respect. "Your hospitality honors me," she said, inclining her head in the slight bow that signified genuine gratitude in draconian custom. Alex's eyebrows rose slightly, suggesting he recognized the cultural significance of her gesture. "Rest well, cultural attaché Liana," he replied, his pronunciation of her name surprisingly accurate. The sleeping area was small, but comfortable, with a bed that adjusted automatically to her weight and body temperature. Liana removed her outer diplomatic attire, but kept her base garments on, a concession to being in a stranger's dwelling. She placed the data crystal and her credentials within easy reach, then settled onto the bed. Despite her exhaustion, sleep didn't come immediately. Her mind replayed the attack on the sun scale, the urgent evacuation, Commander Thorne's cryptic warning. Something larger was at play, something that threatened not just her mission, but the peace process itself. And then, there was Alex, an enigma. Not the simple frontier researcher he claimed to be. Certainly. His knowledge, his equipment, his very dwelling spoke of someone with resources and training beyond the typical colonist. Could she trust him? Did she have a choice? The regenerative patch on her shoulder pulsed warmly, knitting damaged tissue. Outside. Zartax's wind whispered through purple vegetation. In the main room, she could hear Alex moving quietly, the soft sounds of someone trying not to disturb another's rest. Eventually, lulled by the relative safety and warmth, Liana drifted into sleep, her dreams filled with falling ships, warning klaxons, and a pair of twilight blue human eyes that somehow didn't look at her with fear. Morning came with the gentle chime of an alarm, followed by the rich aroma of something brewing in the kitchenette. Liana awoke instantly, a draconian trait. Her species didn't experience the grogginess humans often complained of upon waking. She found Alex already dressed and alert, preparing what appeared to be a hot beverage. He glanced up as she emerged from the sleeping area. "Morning," he greeted her. "Sleep well?" "Adequately," Liana replied, though in truth she had slept better than expected given the circumstances. "Your accommodation was most satisfactory." A flicker of amusement crossed Alex's face at her formal tone. "Coffee?" he offered, indicating the steaming pot. "Or I have tea if you prefer. Both should be compatible with draconian digestion." "Tea would be acceptable," Liana said, surprised at his continued thoughtfulness regarding her physiology. As Alex prepared the tea, Liana took the opportunity to assess her shoulder. The regenerative patch had dissolved, leaving the skin beneath her scales slightly tender, but significantly improved. Her movement range had returned to nearly normal. "Your medical treatment was effective," she acknowledged. "The patch has completed its work." Alex nodded, handing her a container of tea. "Good. We might need you at full capacity today." Something in his tone suggested he anticipated complications. "You expect difficulties at the relay station?" Liana asked directly. "Let's just say Briggs has friends in the communications sector," Alex replied. "And word travels fast in small settlements." Liana sipped the tea, a mild herbal blend, pleasantly warming. "Then perhaps I should proceed alone. Your assistance has already exceeded any reasonable expectation, and I would not wish to embroil you in potential conflict." Alex smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his features. "Trying to protect the human, cultural attaché?" "Attempting to limit complications," Liana corrected, though she felt a strange warmth that had nothing to do with the tea. This human's perception was unsettling. "Well, I'm already complicated," Alex said lightly. He checked a small device that displayed local time. "Relay station opens in 30 minutes. We should eat something before we go." The meal was simple, but nutritious. Synthesized protein adjusted for draconian dietary needs, accompanied by a native Zartax fruit that Alex assured her was safe for her consumption. Its purple flesh had a tangy sweetness that Liana found unexpectedly pleasant. As they ate, Alex briefed her on what to expect at the relay station. Its layout, the likely personnel on duty, alternative approaches should they encounter resistance. His knowledge was detailed and strategic, further confirming Liana's suspicion that he was far more than a simple researcher. "You have military training," she observed between bites of the purple fruit. Alex paused, then shrugged. "Some. Doesn't everyone on the frontier?" "Not at your level of expertise," Liana countered, "nor with your knowledge of security systems and protocols." Instead of denying it, Alex met her gaze directly. "We all have our backgrounds, cultural attaché, some more complicated than others." "Indeed," Liana agreed, deciding not to press further, for now. Shall we proceed to the relay station? The settlement looked different by day, its utilitarian structures softened somewhat by Zartax's golden sunlight. The purple vegetation encroached everywhere, growing between buildings and along pathways, giving the impression that the human presence here was temporary, a brief intrusion on the alien landscape. Few people were about at this early hour, but those they passed stared openly at Liana, some with the same hostility she'd encountered at the tavern, others with simple curiosity. Alex walked beside her, his manner casual, but his eyes constantly moving, assessing potential threats. The relay station was a squat, heavily shielded building near the settlement's center, its multiple antennae and satellite dishes oriented toward the sky. A security barrier surrounded it, with a single checkpoint manned by a bored-looking human in corporate security attire. "Morning, Jensen," Alex called as they approached. The guard straightened immediately, his expression shifting from boredom to alert wariness as he noticed Liana. "Alex, unusual company you're keeping." Cultural attaché Liana of the Draconian Diplomatic Corps. Alex introduced her smoothly. Her transport had difficulties. She needs to use the subspace relay to contact her people. Jensen's hand drifted toward his sidearm. "Got authorization for bringing non-human personnel into a restricted communication facility." Section 7. Interstellar Emergency Protocols. Alex replied without hesitation. Any accredited diplomat of a recognized spacefaring civilization is entitled to emergency communication access at any Terran facility following verified transport failure. Liana blinked, impressed despite herself. That was a verbatim citation of a relatively obscure diplomatic clause, one that most humans, even those in security positions, wouldn't know. Jensen looked equally surprised. "I'd need to see credentials," he said, less certain now. Liana produced her diplomatic identification, the holographic seal of the Draconian Imperium glinting in the sunlight. "My credentials, as requested." The guard examined them, then reluctantly stepped aside. 30 minutes max," he said. "And you stay with her the whole time." Alex. "Wouldn't dream of leaving," Alex replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Inside, the relay station was cool and humming with the sound of communication equipment. A technician looked up from a console, eyes widening at the sight of Liana. "Diplomatic emergency access," Alex explained, before the technician could speak. "Subspace Terminal 3 still operational?" The technician nodded, seemingly too startled by Liana's presence to argue. Alex led her to a private communication booth, equipped with a subspace relay interface. "Should give you direct access to any registered diplomatic channel," he explained, activating the system with practiced ease. "I'll wait outside to give you privacy." Liana hesitated. "That is not necessary. The communications will be in standard diplomatic code." Something flickered in Alex's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at her willingness to let him remain. "All right," he said, taking a position by the door where he could monitor both the booth and the relay station's main area. Liana interfaced with the communication system, entering the secure channel codes for the Draconian delegation at Proxima Station. The system hummed, establishing the subspace link across interstellar distances. After several tense moments, a response came. Not the full visual communication she'd hoped for, but a text-only channel, heavily encrypted. "Identify," the message read simply. Liana entered her diplomatic authentication codes, then added, "Cultural attaché. Liana reporting. Sunscale attacked. Escaped via pod to Zartax outpost. Condition stable. Request extraction and situation update." The response took longer this time, suggesting the recipient was conferring with others or verifying her information. Authentication confirmed. Situation critical. Sunscale destroyed. Casualties extensive. Treaty negotiations suspended pending investigation. Remain in place. Extraction team dispatched. Estimated arrival, 3 standard days. Leanna's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a draconian expression of shock and distress. The sun scale destroyed? Her colleagues, her friends, gone? She forced herself to focus, entering another query. Commander Thorne's status. Unknown. Presumed lost with ship. Data package in your possession now priority alpha. Secure until extraction. So Thorne might be dead. But the data crystal he'd entrusted to her remained vital. Perhaps even more so now. Leanna's hand moved unconsciously to her credential pouch, where the crystal was secured. Understood, she replied. We'll maintain position and secure package. Leanna out. She disconnected from the system. Her movements automatic as her mind processed the devastating news. The sun scale destroyed. Her delegation decimated. The peace talks in jeopardy. Bad news? Alex asked quietly from his position by the door. Leanna looked up, momentarily having forgotten his presence. His expression showed genuine concern, though she doubted a human could fully comprehend the depths of what she'd just learned. The loss, not just of colleagues, but of clutchmates. The cultural significance of such a catastrophic attack on a diplomatic vessel. My ship was destroyed, she said simply, her translator unable to convey the harmonic undertones that would have communicated her grief to another draconian. Most aboard are presumed lost. Alex's expression sobered. I'm sorry, he said, and something in his tone suggested he understood more than she'd expected. What happens now? An extraction team has been dispatched, Leanna replied, gathering her composure. 3 standard days until arrival. I am to maintain position and... She hesitated, then continued. Await their arrival. If Alex noticed her slight pause, he gave no indication. 3 days. That's a long time to be visible in a settlement that's not exactly friendly to draconians. I am aware, Leanna said dryly. However, alternatives appear limited. Not necessarily, Alex countered. My place is secure and off most local scans. You'd be welcome to stay until your extraction team arrives. Leanna studied him, trying to discern his motivation. That would be a significant imposition. I've got the space, Alex shrugged. And it beats trying to camp in your crashed pod or dealing with Briggs and his friends for 3 days? He had a point. Even if she returned to her pod, its location would eventually be discovered. In the settlement, she would be conspicuous and vulnerable. Alex's dwelling, isolated and apparently equipped with security measures beyond the norm, offered the best chance of maintaining a low profile until extraction. Very well, she agreed. I accept your offer with gratitude and will ensure proper compensation upon my extraction. Alex waved a dismissive hand. We can discuss that later. For now, let's get back before Jensen decides 30 minutes is up. They exited the relay station without incident, though Jensen's suspicious gaze followed them until they were out of sight. The settlement was more active now, with miners heading to transport shuttles and merchants opening their stalls. We should stop for supplies, Alex suggested, as they passed a market area. 3 days' worth of food for a draconian appetite. Leanna nodded, following him to a stall displaying a variety of goods. The merchant, a weathered human female with intricate tattoos, marking her as originally from the Terran southern continents, eyed Leanna with uncertainty, but not outright hostility. Morning, May, Alex greeted her. Need provisions for my guest. Your guest, is it? The merchant replied, her gaze moving between them with open curiosity. Interesting friends you make. Alex. I try to keep life interesting, he replied easily. What have you got that's suitable for draconian metabolism? To Leanna's surprise, the merchant seemed knowledgeable about draconian dietary needs, selecting appropriate preserved proteins and vegetable analogs. Synthesis nutrients, too, May added, including a container of supplements. Zartax air's thin for draconian lungs. These help? Alex paid with a credit transfer that Leanna noted, registered under a code, rather than a name. Another curious detail about her enigmatic host. They continued through the market, collecting additional supplies, including a datapad with local maps and information that Alex suggested might be useful during her stay. As they walked back toward Alex's dwelling, Leanna became aware of being watched. Not the open staring of curious settlers, but something more calculated. She casually scanned their surroundings, her draconian senses, particularly her enhanced peripheral vision, allowing her to do so without obvious movement. There, a figure in the shadow between buildings, wearing the same mining insignia as Briggs from the tavern. And there, another on a rooftop, the glint of optics suggesting surveillance equipment. "We're being observed," she murmured to Alex, keeping her voice low. "3 of them," he confirmed without breaking stride or giving any indication he was aware. "Been following since the relay station. Keep walking normally." His immediate grasp of the situation, and the fact that he'd already counted their observers, further confirmed Leanna's suspicions about his background. This was not a man unaccustomed to surveillance or potential threats. They reached the edge of the settlement without incident, but as they approached the path leading to Alex's isolated dwelling, the sense of being watched intensified. "They'll know where I'm staying now," Leanna observed. "They already knew," Alex replied calmly. "Settlement this size. Not much stays secret. But knowing and being able to do something about it are different things." He flashed a brief smile. "My security systems are better than they look." Back inside the dome, Alex activated what appeared to be additional security measures, force fields and sensor arrays that hadn't been visible during Leanna's first entry. The dwelling transformed subtly from a simple habitat to something approaching a defensive position. "Expecting trouble?" Leanna asked, setting down the supplies they'd purchased. "Always," Alex replied, checking readings on his workstation. "Especially when hosting a draconian diplomat, carrying something important enough to blow up a ship over." Leanna went still. "I don't recall mentioning anything being carried." Alex turned to face her, his expression serious now, all casual pretense gone. "You didn't have to. The way you keep your credential pouch close, the way you checked it immediately after your communication at the relay station, the fact that you were specifically evacuated from a ship that was subsequently destroyed, it all suggests you're carrying something valuable." Leanna's posture shifted subtly into a more defensive stance, a reaction born of centuries of draconian warrior genetics. "Who are you? Alex? Truly?" For a moment he said nothing, simply studying her with those twilight blue eyes. Then he seemed to come to a decision. "Terran Alliance Intelligence," he said quietly. "Special Diplomatic Security Division." The revelation wasn't entirely surprising given his behavior and capabilities, but the specific division gave Leanna pause. "You're assigned to the treaty negotiations?" "Monitoring potential threats to the process," Alex confirmed. "Both sides have elements that would prefer continued conflict. My job is to identify and neutralize those elements when possible." "And your presence on Zartax?" Leanna pressed. "Intelligence suggested possible sabotage attempts originating from this sector. I was dispatched to investigate." His gaze was steady, direct. "I didn't expect a draconian diplomat to literally fall from the sky into my operation." Leanna considered this information carefully. If he was truly Terran intelligence working to protect the treaty process, then their goals aligned. But verification was impossible under current circumstances, and Commander Thorne's warning remained paramount. "I appreciate your candor," she said formally. "However, you understand that I cannot simply take your word on such matters." "I'd be disappointed if you did," Alex replied with a slight smile. "Trust should be earned, not given blindly." An understanding passed between them, mutual respect for professional caution, recognition that full trust would require time and evidence. "So," Alex continued, returning to the supplies they'd gathered, 3 days until your extraction team arrives. We should establish a routine, keep you out of sight as much as possible, and prepare for contingencies if our watchers decide to become more than observers. The next hours were spent in practical preparations, organizing supplies, reviewing the dwelling's security measures, establishing communication protocols if they needed to separate. Alex's professional expertise was evident in every suggestion, every contingency plan. As the day progressed, Leanna found herself gradually relaxing in his presence. There was something refreshingly direct about him, a quality rare among humans in her experience, who often surrounded simple concepts with unnecessary social complexities. Alex stated problems clearly and proposed solutions efficiently, much like a draconian would. By evening, they had settled into a companionable routine. Alex prepared a meal from their supplies, demonstrating surprising skill in adapting human cooking techniques to draconian dietary preferences. "This is unexpectedly palatable," Leanna commented as she sampled the dish, a protein-rich stew infused with spices that approximated traditional draconian flavors. "High praise indeed," Alex chuckled. "Part of my training included culinary diplomacy. You'd be surprised how many interspecies incidents have been averted by a well-prepared meal." "Culinary diplomacy," Leanna repeated, finding the concept both amusing and sensible. "Perhaps you should instruct my colleagues. Some of our formal diplomatic banquets have been challenging for non-draconian attendees." "Let me guess. Still wriggling protein sources and fire spices that would burn through human esophageal tissue?" Alex asked, with a knowing smile. "Our metabolisms require living enzymes and intense flavor stimulation," Leanna replied, a hint of defensiveness in her tone. "No judgment," Alex assured her. "Every species has its culinary quirks. Humans consume milk proteins extracted from other species' mammary glands and consider it normal." This observation, and the matter-of-fact way he presented it, startled a laugh from Leanna, a deep, melodious sound rarely heard by non-draconians. Alex looked pleased at having elicited this response. As they continued their meal, conversation flowed more easily. Alex shared stories of diplomatic missions gone awkwardly awry, while Leanna recounted her struggles adapting to human cultural norms during her training. "The constant physical contact," she said, shaking her head slightly. "Handshakes, shoulder touches, these high fives. It was overwhelming at first. In draconian culture, physical contact is reserved for clutchmates or formal combat. Yet you adapted," Alex observed. "That takes a special kind of flexibility, mental and cultural." "Necessity," Leanna replied. "My family has a proud warrior tradition stretching back 17 generations. When I chose the diplomatic path instead, adaptation became imperative to prove my choice valid." "They disapproved?" Alex asked, his tone suggesting genuine interest rather than mere politeness. Leanna's inner eyelids flickered briefly, a draconian sigh. "My clutchmate Varex called it hiding behind words instead of standing behind weapons. My progenitor was more diplomatic, but clearly disappointed." "And yet you persisted," Alex noted. "Why?" The question was simple but profound. Leanna considered her answer carefully. "Because draconians and humans have more to gain together than apart," she said finally. "Because 3 centuries of conflict has brought neither side lasting victory, only perpetual suspicion. Because—" she hesitated, then continued with unexpected candor. "Because I believe we are not so different, at our core." Alex's expression softened. "That's a rare perspective, on both sides. Hence the need for diplomats," Leanna replied, with a slight upward curl of her lips, the draconian equivalent of a smile. After they finished eating, Alex checked the security perimeter again, noting that their observers had withdrawn for the night, but would likely return by morning. "We should rest," he suggested. "Take shifts, to be safe." "I require less sleep than humans," Leanna pointed out. 4 hours would be sufficient for my recovery." Draconian efficiency, Alex said with a small smile. Still, we should both be at full capacity. I'll take first watch. Wake you in 4 hours. Leanna nodded her agreement and moved toward the sleeping area, then paused. I have occupied your sleeping space for 2 nights now. This is an imposition. It's no trouble, Alex assured her. In draconian culture, offering one's personal rest space is a significant gesture, Leanna explained. I would not abuse such hospitality. What would be the appropriate response in draconian culture? Alex asked, his tone curious rather than dismissive. Leanna hesitated. The truth was complex and potentially uncomfortable to explain. In draconian tradition, once hospitality reached the level of shared dwelling space, it was customary to also share resting quarters, a sign of mutual trust and respect. But such customs were often misinterpreted by humans, and she had no wish to create awkwardness. The customs are different, she said diplomatically. Human norms should prevail here. Alex studied her for a moment, his perceptiveness, again, surprising her. You're concerned about cultural misunderstandings, he observed. But I'd genuinely like to know. Professional interest, if nothing else. Leanna considered, then decided directness was best. In draconian culture, after initial hospitality is established, the sharing of resting quarters becomes appropriate. It signifies mutual trust, that neither party fears attack during vulnerable periods of rest. Like sharing a bed? Alex asked, his expression neutral, professional. Similar in concept, Leanna acknowledged. Though draconian resting platforms differ from human beds, the principle is one of mutual vulnerability, accepted without fear. Alex nodded thoughtfully. That actually makes perfect sense for a warrior culture. Trust demonstrated through voluntary vulnerability. His understanding, free from the discomfort or awkwardness Leanna had anticipated, was refreshing. Precisely, she confirmed. However, I recognize that human norms differ significantly in this regard. Maybe less than you think, Alex said with a slight smile. Humans have similar concepts, though often wrapped in different social contexts. He gestured to the sleeping area. The bed's large enough for 2, and it would be more efficient than taking shifts. If you're comfortable with that arrangement. Leanna blinked, her inner eyelids flickering in surprise. This human continued to defy her expectations. You would follow draconian custom? I would respect your cultural norms while we find a compromise that works for both of us, Alex replied. Isn't that what diplomacy is about? The statement, simple but profound, resonated with Leanna. It encapsulated everything she had worked for in her diplomatic career, finding the common ground between different species that allowed for mutual respect and accommodation. A most diplomatic solution, she acknowledged, a hint of her draconian smile curving her lips. And so they established a new arrangement, sharing the sleeping area while maintaining respective personal boundaries. The bed adjusted to accommodate both their forms, and they positioned themselves with a respectful distance between them. Leanna found the arrangement strangely comforting. In the darkness, she could sense Alex's presence, his slower human heartbeat, his steady breathing. There was something profoundly reassuring about not being alone, especially after the shock of learning about the sun scale's destruction. May I ask a personal question? Alex's voice came quietly through the darkness. You may, Leanna replied, curious. What made you choose diplomacy over the warrior tradition? It seems like it cost you a lot, personally. The question was unexpected but not unwelcome. Leanna considered her answer carefully. I witnessed an interspecies conflict resolution during my final training cycle, she said finally. A negotiator, a Quarian, actually, prevented bloodshed between a human mining consortium and a draconian territorial patrol. Not through force or intimidation, but through words, understanding, and creative problem-solving. She paused, remembering that day vividly. The warrior's path is honorable, she continued, but it is well traveled among my kind. The diplomatic path offered a different kind of challenge, one that required courage of a different sort. The courage to break tradition, Alex suggested, to risk disapproval. Yes, Leanna acknowledged. And the courage to believe that centuries of enmity could be overcome, that different species could find common purpose despite their differences. Silence fell between them, comfortable rather than awkward. Leanna found herself appreciating this human's capacity for meaningful conversation, and his respect for her choices, so often questioned among her own kind. "Thank you for sharing that," Alex said finally. "It helps me understand." "And you?" Leanna asked. "What brought you to intelligence work rather than more conventional human occupations?" Now it was Alex's turn to consider carefully. "I grew up on a border colony," he said after a moment. "Saw firsthand how propaganda and fear could turn neighbors against each other, humans against non-humans. How much of the conflict was manufactured to benefit power structures, rather than ordinary people." His voice took on a more passionate quality. "I wanted to work where I could see the whole board, understand the game being played, where I might help change the rules, even in small ways." "A noble aspiration," Leanna observed. "Maybe," Alex replied, a smile in his voice. "Or maybe just stubbornness. My mother always said I couldn't leave well enough alone." Leanna found herself smiling in the darkness. "A trait I understand well. My clutchmate says I question when I should accept." "Sounds like we have more in common than either of our species might expect," Alex said softly. The observation hung in the air between them, simple but profound. Leanna found herself contemplating it as she drifted toward sleep, the unexpected commonality between a draconian diplomat and a human intelligence operative, both working in their own ways toward the same improbable goal of peace. Her last conscious thought before sleep claimed her was that perhaps Commander Thorne's warning to trust no one admitted exceptions after all. Leanna woke to the sound of soft movement. Alex was already up, checking security readings at his workstation with focused intensity. Sunlight filtered through the dome's translucent sections, indicating mid-morning. "You should have woken me," she said, rising from the bed with draconian efficiency. Alex glanced up. "You needed the rest. Besides, nothing significant to report. Our watchers returned at dawn, maintaining distance." Leanna moved to join him at the workstation, noting the surveillance feeds showing the perimeter around the dwelling. 3 figures, humans in mining attire, were indeed visible at different observation points among the purple vegetation. "They're being less subtle today," she observed. "Because they're building courage for something," Alex replied grimly. "Briggs was at the tavern late into the night, talking with off-duty security personnel." "The settlement security might support hostile action?" Leanna asked, concern edging her voice. "Not officially," Alex said, "but unofficially. This is a corporate mining outpost. The local security force answers to the mining executives, not the Terran Alliance central government, and the corporations have been vocal opponents of the peace treaty. Because peace would mean draconian mining operations in previously human-exclusive territories." Leanna nodded, understanding the economic motives. "Exactly. More competition, lower profits." Alex pulled up additional data on his display. "I've been monitoring communication frequencies. There's been unusual traffic to and from the outpost in the last 12 hours. Someone's taking a lot of interest in a draconian diplomat, suddenly appearing on Zartax." Leanna's mind raced through implications. Could they have been involved in the attack on the Sunscale? "Possible," Alex acknowledged. "Though an operation that scale would require resources beyond a frontier mining outfit. More likely, they're opportunists, taking advantage of the situation." He closed the surveillance feeds and turned to face her fully. "I need to ask you something important, Leanna. The data Crystal Commander Thorne gave you, what does it contain?" Leanna tensed. This was the most direct reference to the crystal yet, and despite their growing rapport, Commander Thorne's warning remained a powerful caution. "I was not informed of its specific contents," she said carefully. "Only that it was vital to the peace negotiations." Alex studied her, clearly weighing her response. "I understand your caution," he said finally. "But consider this. If that crystal contains what I suspect it might, evidence of who's behind the attacks on the peace process, then it puts you in significant danger. Not just from local thugs like Briggs, but from whoever orchestrated the destruction of your ship." "You have a theory," Leanna observed. "Several," Alex admitted. "None I can prove without more information." He hesitated, then added, "I want to help you, Leanna. Not just because it's my mission to protect the peace process, but because—" He paused, seemingly searching for words, unusual for someone normally so articulate. "Because," Leanna prompted. "Because I believe in what you're trying to do," he said simply. "Because in the last 2 days, you've confirmed everything I've argued to my superiors for years, that draconians and humans have more commonalities than differences. That peace isn't just possible, but necessary." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, even to Leanna's ears, accustomed to the more complex harmonic tones of draconian speech. Something shifted in her assessment of this human, a recognition that perhaps, despite Commander Thorne's warnings, here was someone who could be trusted. Decision made. She reached for her credential pouch and carefully extracted the data crystal, a small, multifaceted object that glimmered with iridescent light. "Commander Thorne gave me this before ordering my evacuation. His exact words were, 'Trust no one. Get this to the summit. Everything depends on it.'" Alex looked at the crystal, but made no move to take it. "Quantum encrypted data storage," he identified. "High security. Military grade." "Yes," Leanna confirmed. "Accessible only to senior diplomatic personnel with proper authentication, which means neither of us can access its contents," Alex concluded. "But its existence alone tells us something important. Commander Thorne believed he had evidence significant enough to threaten someone powerful. Evidence he thought worth preserving, even as his ship was under attack." A thought seemed to strike him suddenly. "Your escape pod. Where exactly did you crash?" "Approximately half a day's walk from the settlement," Leanna replied. "In a clearing among the purple vegetation." Alex activated a topographical map on his workstation. "Can you pinpoint it?" Leanna studied the map, her draconian memory precisely recalling the journey. She indicated a location. "Here. The clearing is distinctive, circular, with taller vegetation around its perimeter." Alex marked the location, then overlaid sensor readings. "No official salvage operations have been dispatched to that area yet. Interesting." "You believe the pod may contain additional information?" Leanna asked. "Or evidence of sabotage," Alex suggested. "If your evacuation was deliberate, Commander Thorne specifically sending you away with that crystal, then the attack might not have been random. The pod itself might tell us something." "The crash site should be examined," Leanna agreed. "It's risky," Alex cautioned. "We'd have to leave the security of the dome, and our watchers would certainly follow." "We have little choice," Leanna pointed out. "My extraction team will not arrive for 2 more days, and we cannot remain passive while unknown threats gather." "Agreed," Alex nodded, respect evident in his expression. "We'll need to move carefully, though. Create a distraction to slip away from our observers." They spent the next hour planning their expedition to the crash site. Alex's strategic thinking complemented Leanna's draconian precision, resulting in a methodical approach that accounted for multiple contingencies. "We'll need supplies," Alex said, checking his equipment. "Enough for a potential overnight stay if complications arise. The terrain between here and the crash site is challenging. Dense vegetation, uneven ground." "I can navigate it," Leanna assured him. Draconian physiology is well adapted to varied terrain. I don't doubt it, Alex smiled. But we should still prepare properly. As they gathered what they needed, Leanna found herself watching Alex with growing curiosity. His movements were efficient, his preparations thorough, qualities her draconian culture valued highly. Yet, there was also a flexibility to his thinking, an adaptability that contrasted with the sometimes rigid approach of her own species. "May I ask you something?" she said as he packed a portable medical kit. "Of course," he replied without looking up. "You show no fear or discomfort in my presence," Leanna observed. Most humans react differently to draconians, especially in close quarters. Alex paused, considering his response. "I've worked with non-humans extensively," he said. "But more than that, I try to see individuals, not species. Judge actions, not appearances." "A rare perspective," Leanna noted. "Maybe," Alex acknowledged. "Or maybe just practical. Fear based on appearance is rarely useful. It blinds you to potential allies and distracts from real threats." He glanced up at her with a slight smile. "Besides, I find draconian culture fascinating. The emphasis on honor, precision, collective achievement while maintaining individual excellence." "You've studied our culture," Leanna realized. "Part of my job," Alex said, returning to his preparations. "But also personal interest. The more I learned, the more I found to respect." This admission, so casually delivered yet so profound in its implications, affected Leanna more deeply than she had anticipated. Throughout her diplomatic career, she had encountered humans who tolerated draconian culture, who negotiated with it, who strategized around it, but rarely one who had taken the time to understand and respect it on its own terms. "Your perspective honors me," she said formally, using a traditional draconian phrase that her translator rendered accurately into English. Alex looked up, recognizing the cultural significance of her words. "The honor is mutual. Cultural attaché Liana," he replied, his pronunciation of her name and title nearly perfect. The moment was interrupted by an alert from the security system, a proximity warning that one of their observers had moved closer to the dwelling. "Time to implement our distraction," Alex said, moving to his workstation. "Ready?" Leanna nodded, assuming her position near the dwelling's rear exit, a concealed panel that Alex had revealed during their planning session. Alex activated a remote protocol, and suddenly, alarms blared from the settlement's direction. On his display, Leanna could see their observers reacting, communicating via handheld devices, then reluctantly moving toward the source of the alarms. "Settlement Perimeter Breach Protocol," Alex explained, with a satisfied smile. "Automated system thinks there's wildlife entering the eastern sector. They'll have to respond, part of mandatory security procedures." "Effective," Leanna acknowledged. "How long will the distraction last?" 20 minutes. Maybe 30 before they realize it's a false alarm," Alex replied. "Should be enough to get us into the vegetation with a good head start." They slipped out through the concealed exit, immediately entering the dense purple foliage that surrounded the dwelling. Alex led the way at first, moving with surprising stealth for a human, until they were well away from any potential observation points. Then, Leanna took the lead. Her draconian senses, particularly her enhanced vision and ability to detect subtle temperature variations, making her the better navigator through the alien terrain. The purple vegetation grew thickly around them, some stalks rising higher than their heads, creating a labyrinth of organic matter. They maintained silence as they traveled, communicating with hand signals when necessary. Leanna found herself appreciating the efficiency of moving alongside someone who matched her pace and understood tactical movement, even if he was human. After several hours of steady progress, they approached the crash site. Alex signaled for caution, and they advanced more slowly, watching for any signs that others might have reached the pod before them. The clearing came into view, A perfect circle amid the purple vegetation, just as Liana had described. In its center lay her escape pod, its hull still scorched from atmospheric entry, partially embedded in the soft soil of Zartax. No signs of disturbance, Alex murmured, scanning the area through compact optical enhancers. Looks like we're the first visitors since your landing. That seems improbable, Liana observed. A crashed alien vessel would typically attract immediate investigation, unless someone wanted it to remain undiscovered, Alex suggested, lowering the enhancers. Let's approach carefully. They circled the clearing's perimeter, checking for surveillance devices or traps before finally entering the open space. The pod looked smaller somehow than Liana remembered, its hull crumpled at impact points, emergency vents still partially open. Alex examined the exterior, while Liana accessed the manual hatch release. The pod's interior was exactly as she had left it, emergency lighting still functioning at minimal levels. The pilot's restraint system hanging loose. "I'll check the onboard systems," she said, moving to the control panel. Alex nodded, continuing his exterior inspection. "The communications array," he called after a moment. "It wasn't just damaged in the crash. Look at these cut patterns." Liana joined him outside, examining the twisted remains of the pod's communication system. The damage pattern was distinctive, clean shears through crucial connectors, not the random destruction of a crash impact. "Deliberate sabotage," she confirmed, her inner eyelids flickering with concern. "Before launch," which means someone on the sun scale wanted to ensure you couldn't call for immediate help once you landed. Alex concluded. The plot thickens. They returned to the pod's interior, where Liana attempted to access the backup systems. Most were non-functional, but the emergency data recorder, a standard feature in diplomatic vessels, responded to her authentication codes. "I have access to the pod's launch sequence data," she reported, as information scrolled across a small auxiliary display. "What does it show?" Alex asked, looking over her shoulder. "The evacuation was unusual," Liana said slowly, reading the data. Most escape protocols involve multiple pods launching simultaneously. This was a single pod launch, manually authorized by Commander Thorne using override codes. "He specifically wanted you out," Alex observed. "Before whatever happened to the sun scale happened." "Yes," Liana agreed, continuing to scroll through the data. "And there's more. The pod's navigation was pre-programmed as Zartax, not the nearest Terran outpost as standard protocols would dictate. Thorne wanted you on Zartax specifically," Alex mused. "Why?" Before Liana could respond, a new data sequence appeared on the display, a secured message file, encoded to her personal diplomatic authentication. "This wasn't here before," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "It must have been programmed to reveal itself only upon secondary access." "A dead man's switch," Alex suggested. "Insurance that you'd return to the pod." Liana entered her authentication codes, and the message decoded. A holographic image of Commander Thorne appeared above the display, a tall, severe-looking draconian with deep red scales and the elaborate horn ridges of a high-ranking official. "Cultural Attaché Liana," the hologram began, speaking in Draconian, with subtitles scrolling in Terran English beneath. A diplomatic courtesy. "If you are viewing this message, then events have progressed as I feared. The sun scale has likely been destroyed, and you are stranded on Zartax." Thorne's holographic image flickered slightly, but his voice remained strong. "Your evacuation was not random. You were selected because of your proven integrity and your unique background, a warrior lineage who chose diplomacy. The data crystal in your possession contains evidence of a conspiracy that threatens not just the peace treaty, but the stability of both our civilizations." The commander's expression grew even more grave. "Arms manufacturers from both the Draconian Imperium and the Terran Alliance have been collaborating secretly to ensure the treaty fails. They have infiltrated both governments at the highest levels, The crystal contains financial records, communication logs, and identities of the conspirators. Liana felt a chill run through her at these words. Such a conspiracy would explain the fanatical opposition to the peace process from certain factions on both sides. Zartax was chosen for your landing because a Terran intelligence operative is stationed there. One of the few individuals our sources indicate is not compromised. Thorn continued. Seek out an operative codenamed Twilight. They will help you deliver the evidence to the appropriate authorities at the summit. The hologram flickered again. Trust no one else, Liana. The conspiracy has agents everywhere. Verification protocols for Twilight are as follows. They will know the response to the purple sky falls heaviest on those who refuse to look up. Liana glanced at Alex, who was watching the hologram with intense focus. The fate of peace between our peoples rests in your hands. Cultural attaché, Thorn concluded. Honor guide your path. The hologram flickered once more, then disappeared. Silence filled the pod as Liana processed this revelation. A conspiracy at the highest levels of both governments, orchestrated by those who profited from continued conflict. It explains so much. The mysterious attacks on diplomatic missions, the leaked documents that had repeatedly sabotaged negotiations, the persistence of anti-peace propaganda. The crystal, Alex said, finally, his voice quiet. It's even more important than we thought. Yes, Liana agreed. And this operative, Twilight, we must locate them. A strange expression crossed Alex's face. I believe you already have, he said. The purple sky falls heaviest on those who refuse to look up. Liana stared at him, remembering the verification protocol Thorn had mentioned. You know the response? But the determined watcher sees stars beyond the purple, Alex replied, his twilight blue eyes meeting hers steadily. The verification phrase and response, a security protocol she had not known existed, which meant, you are Twilight, Liana realized. Alex nodded. That's my operational codename in Terran intelligence. Commander Thorn and I had established communication channels months ago, part of a joint task force investigating threats to the peace process. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Liana demanded, a hint of draconian fierceness entering her voice. Because I needed to be certain you were who you appeared to be, Alex explained calmly. And because operational security dictated caution. I couldn't be sure the real cultural attaché Liana had survived, or if someone else had taken her place. His logic was sound, though Liana still felt a ripple of irritation at having been tested. And now? Now I'm certain, Alex said. Your knowledge, your reactions, your integrity, all consistent with Commander Thorn's assessment of you. And this message confirms what I suspected. We're dealing with something much larger than local mining interests. A conspiracy spanning both our civilizations, Liana said grimly. Powerful interests who benefit from keeping our species in conflict. Exactly, Alex nodded. And they'll stop at nothing to prevent that crystal from reaching the summit. As if summoned by his words, a warning chime sounded from a device at his belt. Perimeter alert, he said, checking it quickly. We've got company approaching the clearing. Multiple signatures. Liana's senses heightened immediately, her draconian heritage asserting itself in the face of potential threat. How many? At least 6, Alex replied, moving to the pod's hatch for a visual confirmation. Armed, moving with purpose. Liana joined him, her enhanced vision picking out the approaching figures among the purple vegetation. They were indeed armed, not with the simple weapons of local security, but with military-grade pulse rifles and tactical gear. Not local miners, she observed quietly. No, Alex agreed. Professional mercenaries, by the look of them. Someone's taking this very seriously. They retreated inside the pod, quickly gathering their supplies. Options? Liana asked, her diplomatic composure giving way to efficient tactical assessment. The warrior genetics she had so often suppressed, now serving her well. The pod's a death trap, Alex said, checking his own weapon, a compact but powerful model she recognized as standard Terran intelligence issue. We need to move before they surround us completely. Liana nodded her agreement. The vegetation provides cover. If we can break through their perimeter at its weakest point. East side, Alex suggested. Only 2 hostiles, and the foliage is densest there. Good terrain for evasion. Agreed, Liana said, surprised and impressed by how quickly they had fallen into coordination. Despite their different species and training, stay close, Alex instructed, securing the last of their essential supplies. On my mark. They positioned themselves at the pod's hatch, ready to move. Liana could sense the approaching mercenaries drawing closer, their movements becoming more cautious as they neared the crash site. 3, Alex counted down. 2, 1, move! They burst from the pod, sprinting toward the eastern edge of the clearing. Immediately, shouts erupted from the mercenaries, followed by the distinctive whine of pulse rifles charging. Down! Alex called, pulling Liana behind a raised section of disturbed soil as energy pulses sliced through the air where they had been running. 7 hostiles, Liana updated, her enhanced vision tracking their attackers through the vegetation. Attempting to encircle, Alex fired several precise shots, forcing 2 of the mercenaries to take cover. We need to break their line now, before they complete the encirclement. Liana assessed the tactical situation with the clarity that came from her draconian heritage. Cover me, she said, and before Alex could respond, she launched herself forward in a blur of orange scales. Her speed, a draconian trait enhanced by Zartax's lighter gravity, caught the mercenaries by surprise. She reached the first attacker before he could adjust his aim, her powerful leg sweeping his feet from under him. His weapon clattered away as he fell. Alex provided covering fire, his shots precise and effective, keeping the other mercenaries pinned down as Liana engaged the second guard at their chosen breakout point. This one was better prepared, bringing his weapon to bear as she approached. But draconian reflexes gave Liana the advantage. She twisted aside as the pulse blast discharged, feeling its heat pass centimeters from her scales. Then, she was upon him. A quick strike to his nerve cluster rendering him unconscious. Clear, she called to Alex, who immediately sprinted to join her at the perimeter's edge. Together, they plunged into the dense purple vegetation, the covering fire from the remaining mercenaries going wide as the thick organic matter absorbed and scattered the energy pulses. Keep moving, Alex urged, as they pushed deeper into the alien forest. They'll regroup and pursue. Liana matched his pace, her breathing controlled despite the exertion. You recognize them? Professional military contractors, Alex confirmed grimly. Expensive, well-equipped. Someone's invested serious resources in retrieving that crystal. They continued moving at a rapid pace, changing direction frequently to confuse pursuit. Liana's enhanced senses helped them navigate the increasingly dense vegetation, while Alex's tactical knowledge suggested the most effective evasion patterns. After nearly an hour of constant movement, they paused in a small depression formed by the twisted roots of particularly massive purple plants. The canopy above was thick enough to shield them from aerial observation, and the root system created a natural defensive position. No signs of immediate pursuit, Alex said, checking his scanner. But they'll have called for reinforcements by now. The settlement is compromised, Liana observed. We cannot return to your dwelling. Agreed, Alex nodded. We need a new plan. He checked his communication device. No secure channels available. They're jamming standard frequencies. My extraction team is still more than a day away, Liana reminded him. And without communications, we cannot update them on our situation. Alex considered their options, his expression thoughtful, despite the urgency of their situation. There's an automated relay station about 20 kilometers from here, he said finally. Unmanned. Used for atmospheric monitoring. It has a hardened communication system that might break through the jamming. 20 kilometers through this terrain? Liana calculated. Achievable before nightfall, if we maintain pace. It's our best option, Alex agreed. From there, we might be able to contact your extraction team, update them on the situation, and arrange a new rendezvous point. Decision made. They gathered their remaining supplies and prepared to move out. As Liana adjusted her pack, she noticed Alex studying her with an expression she couldn't quite identify. "What is it?" she asked directly. "I was just thinking," he replied, a slight smile touching his lips, "that you move like a warrior for someone who chose the diplomatic path. Draconian diplomatic training includes combat fundamentals," Liana explained, "and some instincts run deep in our genetics." "It was impressive," Alex said simply. "You saved both our lives back there." The praise, delivered without qualification or surprise, as if her competence was expected rather than exceptional, affected Liana more than she had anticipated. Most humans either feared draconian combat capabilities or fetishized them. Alex merely acknowledged her skill as he might a respected colleague's. "We make an effective team," she observed, finding herself returning his smile with her own draconian version, a subtle expression humans often missed. "We do," Alex agreed, and something in his tone suggested he was referring to more than just their tactical coordination. Before Liana could respond, a distant sound caught her attention, the distinctive whine of anti-gravity engines. "Aircraft," she warned, her hearing detecting what human ears could not yet perceive. Alex immediately moved to check their surroundings. "They're escalating the search," he said grimly. "We need to move. Stay under the canopy as much as possible." They set off again, now moving with even greater caution. The dense vegetation provided good cover from aerial observation, but also slowed their progress. The sounds of searchcraft grew occasionally louder, then faded as the vehicles moved in search patterns across the area. As they traveled, Liana found herself watching Alex with growing respect. He moved with quiet competence through the alien terrain, adapting quickly to changing conditions, never wasting energy or motion. These were qualities highly valued in draconian culture, and she found herself appreciating them in this human operative. "Your training is evident," she observed during a brief rest period. "Few humans move with such efficiency in challenging environments." "Special field training," Alex explained, taking a careful sip from his water container. "Plus, years of experience on frontier worlds. You learn to adapt, or you don't survive." "Your skills would be respected among draconians," Liana told him, high praise from her species. Alex smiled. "Coming from you, I'll take that as a significant compliment." Their journey continued through the afternoon, the purple vegetation gradually changing character as they moved away from the settlement and crash site. The plants grew taller, their structures more complex, creating an alien cathedral of organic matter above and around them. The day was fading toward evening when they finally approached the relay station Alex had mentioned. It stood in a small clearing, a utilitarian structure of metallized composite, bristling with sensors and communication equipment. "No signs of human presence," Liana confirmed, her senses detecting no heat signatures or movement around the facility. "Should be automated," Alex said, approaching cautiously, nonetheless. "Basic security protocols, but I have override codes." He accessed the station's entry panel, inputting a series of commands. After a moment's hesitation, the door slid open, revealing a compact interior filled with monitoring equipment and communication arrays. "We should be able to send a secure burst transmission from here," Alex explained, moving to the primary console. "Short range, but powerful enough to cut through standard jamming." While he worked on establishing communication, Liana secured the perimeter, her senses alert for any sign of pursuit. The alien forest had grown quiet as Zartax's sun began to set, the purple vegetation taking on deeper hues in the fading light. "I'm in," Alex called from inside the station. "System accepting override codes." Liana joined him at the console, where he was configuring the communication array. "Can you reach my extraction team?" "Working on it," Alex replied, his fingers moving rapidly across the interface. "The jamming is sophisticated, military grade. Whoever's after us has serious resources." As he worked, Liana noticed a subtle change in his expression, a sudden focus, a slight tension around his eyes. "What is it?" she asked. "The jamming pattern," Alex said slowly. "I recognize it. It's a Terran intelligence protocol, one used only by certain divisions. The implication hung in the air between them. If Terran intelligence was behind the jamming, then Commander Thorne's warning about infiltration at the highest levels was confirmed, and Alex's own organization was compromised. "Can you bypass it?" Liana asked, practical concerns taking precedence over the disturbing revelation. "I think so." Alex nodded, his focus returning to the task. Using a deprecated channel they might have overlooked. His hands flew across the controls, implementing workarounds and alternative protocols. Finally, a connection indicator flashed green. "We're through," he announced. "Limited bandwidth, but enough for a burst transmission to your extraction coordinates." Liana quickly composed a message in draconian diplomatic code, updating her superiors on their situation, the evidence they discovered, and the threat they faced. She included the coordinates for a new extraction point Alex had suggested, a natural clearing several kilometers from their current position, far from both the settlement and the crash site. "Transmission sent," Alex confirmed as the system processed her message. "No guarantee it got through clean, but it's our best shot." As if in response to his words, an alert sounded from the console, proximity warnings activating around the relay station. "We've got company," Alex said grimly, checking the external sensors. Multiple signatures approaching from the south. They must have traced the transmission. "How long until they reach us?" Liana asked, already gathering their supplies. 10 minutes, maybe less," Alex replied, shutting down the communication system and erasing evidence of their presence. "We need to move now. Head for the extraction point." They exited the relay station quickly, Alex pausing only to secure the door behind them, a futile gesture perhaps, but one that might buy them precious minutes if their pursuers stopped to check the facility. Night had fallen completely now, Zartax's alien stars shining through gaps in the vegetation canopy. The darkness was less of a hindrance to Liana, whose draconian vision adapted quickly to low-light conditions. She took the lead, guiding them away from the approaching threat and toward their designated extraction point. They moved as quietly as possible through the dense undergrowth, but progress was slower in the darkness. The sounds of pursuit grew gradually closer, crashing vegetation, the occasional burst of communication, the whine of energy weapons being charged. "They're gaining," Alex observed softly, checking behind them. "And they've brought tracking equipment, specifically calibrated for draconian life signs. I'd guess. Then we cannot simply outrun them," Liana concluded. "We need an alternative approach." Alex nodded, his expression resolute in the dim starlight. "I have an idea, risky, but it might work." He quickly outlined a plan that would use the terrain to their advantage, creating a false trail for their pursuers to follow, while they circled back toward the extraction point, via a more difficult, but less obvious route. "It will delay our arrival at the extraction coordinates," Liana noted. "But it might shake off pursuit long enough for your team to reach us," Alex countered. "Worth the risk, I think." Liana considered the plan, appreciating its tactical soundness. "Agreed. Let us proceed." They implemented the deception with careful precision, creating obvious signs of passage in one direction before doubling back through a particularly dense section of vegetation, using a shallow stream to mask their trail, then ascending into the canopy itself, where the massive purple plants created a secondary level of terrain. The sounds of their pursuers grew distant as the mercenaries followed the false trail. giving Leanna and Alex precious time to make progress toward the extraction point. They traveled through the night, pushing their endurance to the limits. Leanna found herself impressed yet again by Alex's stamina, exceptional for a human, nearly matching her own draconian capabilities. They spoke little, saving energy for movement. But there was a comfortable synchronicity to their actions, a wordless coordination that made their progress efficient despite the challenging conditions. Dawn was breaking, Zartax's sun casting golden light through the purple canopy, when they finally approached the extraction coordinates. The clearing Alex had selected was perfect for their needs, large enough for a small vessel to land, yet concealed from casual observation by the surrounding vegetation. No signs of pursuit, Alex confirmed as they conducted a careful perimeter check. I think we lost them, at least temporarily. My extraction team should arrive within 6 standard hours, Leanna said, checking the position of Zartax's sun. Assuming they received our transmission, then we wait, Alex concluded, finding a position that offered both cover and a good view of the clearing. And hope they arrive before our friends pick up our trail again. They settled in to wait, taking the opportunity to rest and replenish their energy with the remaining supplies. The adrenaline of their escape gradually faded, leaving a comfortable quiet between them. Leanna, Alex said after a while, his tone more personal than it had been during their flight. When this is over, when the crystal reaches the summit and the evidence is presented, what happens next? She considered the question carefully. If the conspiracy is exposed, the treaty negotiations should proceed without further sabotage. Peace between our species becomes more likely. And after peace is established, Alex pressed, what happens to the cultural attaché who helped make it possible? Leanna recognized the true question beneath his words. I would continue my diplomatic duties, she said, though perhaps with greater responsibilities, given recent events. Based on Proxima Station, Alex asked, or elsewhere in the diplomatic corps? That would depend on my assignment, Leanna replied, studying him carefully. Why do you ask? Alex's gaze met hers directly. Because I'm wondering if Terran intelligence and the Draconian diplomatic corps might find reason to continue their cooperation, perhaps through liaison officers assigned to work together. The implication was clear, and unexpectedly affecting. This human, this remarkable individual who had shown her respect, trust, and understanding beyond any she had encountered, was suggesting a way for their connection to continue beyond the current crisis. Such cooperation would be logical, Leanna acknowledged, finding herself uncharacteristically hesitant in her phrasing. Given the effectiveness of our current collaboration, a smile touched Alex's lips, warm, genuine, with a hint of something more personal than professional appreciation. Very logical, he agreed, though I admit my interest isn't entirely professional. The admission hung between them, honest, direct, yet carefully phrased to allow her dignified retreat if she wished. It was, Leanna realized, a perfectly diplomatic approach to a decidedly undiplomatic sentiment. Before she could formulate a response, a sound from above caught her attention, the faint but distinctive hum of a vessel's engines, still beyond visual range but approaching rapidly. Aircraft, she said, instantly alert. Coming from the east. They both moved to better cover, watching the sky through gaps in the canopy. A sleek shape appeared, descending toward the clearing, a Draconian diplomatic shuttle, its hull bearing the distinctive markings of the Imperium's official fleet. Your extraction team, Alex confirmed, relaxing slightly. Right on schedule. Relief flooded through Leanna at the sight of the familiar vessel. Their mission, delivering the critical evidence, exposing the conspiracy, protecting the peace process, was nearly complete. Yet mixed with that relief was an unexpected reluctance, a realization that the end of their shared danger might also mean the end of their unlikely partnership. The shuttle hovered briefly above the clearing, scanning the area, then began its landing sequence. As it settled onto the ground, its entry ramp extended, and two figures emerged, draconians in formal security attire, weapons ready, but not aimed. Cultural attaché Liana, one called in Draconian, which Alex wouldn't understand without a translator. Please identify yourself. Liana stepped forward into the clearing, raising her hand in the formal Draconian greeting. I am Liana, cultural attaché to the diplomatic envoy, she replied in the same language. I have the package Commander Thorne entrusted to me. The security officers visibly relaxed, lowering their weapons. We received your transmission, the lead officer explained. The situation is grave. The summit has been suspended pending investigation of the Sunscale incident. Your evidence is crucial. Liana nodded, then turned to where Alex remained partially concealed. This is Alex, she said, switching to English for his benefit. Terran intelligence operative codenamed Twilight. He has provided essential assistance and has knowledge of the conspiracy. He comes with us. The security officers exchanged glances, clearly not having anticipated a human addition to their extraction mission. But Liana's tone left no room for argument, a hint of her warrior heritage asserting itself through her diplomatic demeanor. As you command, cultural attaché, the lead officer acknowledged with a formal bow. Alex stepped forward to join Liana, his expression betraying surprise at her firm inclusion of him in the extraction. You're sure about this? He asked quietly. I could make my own way back through official channels. The conspiracy has infiltrated your organization, Liana reminded him. And besides, your testimony will be valuable at the summit. She paused, then added more personally. And I find I prefer to complete this mission as we began it, together. A slow smile spread across Alex's face, genuine pleasure at her words. Together, then, he agreed. As they boarded the shuttle together, Liana was struck by the symbolism of the moment. A draconian and a human, representatives of species with centuries of mistrust between them, united by shared purpose and growing personal connection. Perhaps it was an omen for the peace they both sought to protect. The shuttle's ramp closed behind them, and the vessel lifted smoothly into Zartax's golden morning sky, leaving the purple world and its dangers behind. But as they secured themselves for the journey to Proxima Station, Liana knew that something significant had begun on that frontier world, something that might prove as important to the future of their species as the treaty itself. The conspiracy would be exposed, the peace process would continue, and perhaps, in the new era that followed, there would be a place for a draconian diplomat and a human intelligence operative to explore the unexpected connection that had formed between them, a connection that bridged species, traditions, and centuries of conflict, proving that differences could become strengths when approached with openness and respect. As the shuttle accelerated toward the stars, Liana found herself looking not back at the planet they were leaving, but forward to the uncertain yet promising future that awaited them, together. The journey to Proxima Station took just under 14 hours, time Liana and Alex used to prepare their presentation of the evidence and coordinate their testimony. The draconian security officers maintained a professional distance, but Liana noticed their occasional glances of curiosity at the easy rapport between her and the human operative. As they approached the massive space station, a neutral facility constructed specifically for the peace negotiations, tensions rose perceptibly. The shuttle was subjected to extensive security scans before being granted docking clearance, a reminder of the heightened alert status following the Sunscale's destruction. They're being cautious, Alex observed as they waited for final approach authorization. Good. If the conspiracy has agents at this level, they'll find it harder to act openly under such scrutiny. Liana nodded, appreciating his tactical assessment. The summit security protocols are jointly administered by both Draconian and human personnel, difficult to compromise entirely. When they finally docked, they were met by a mixed reception party, senior security officials from both species, looking grave and alert. Among them, Liana recognized a tall, distinguished human with the insignia of Terran Intelligence Command. Director Caney, Alex acknowledged, straightening slightly. I wasn't expecting a personal reception. When one of my deep cover operatives suddenly arrives with a draconian diplomatic attaché and claims evidence of a multi-species conspiracy, I make it my business to be present, the director replied dryly. His gaze shifted to Liana. Cultural attaché, on behalf of the Terran Alliance, I extend formal apologies for your ordeal. Your operative was instrumental in ensuring my safety and the security of vital evidence, Liana replied formally. His actions honor the Terran Alliance. Director Caney's eyebrows rose slightly at her words, or perhaps at the way Alex stood slightly closer to her than protocol would normally dictate. I look forward to your full report, he said, his tone neutral, but his eyes sharp with assessment. Both of you. They were escorted to a secure conference facility in the diplomatic sector of the station. Along the way, Liana observed the heightened security presence, mixed patrols of Draconian and human personnel, additional checkpoint scans, surveillance drones monitoring corridors. The attack on the Sunscale had clearly rattled the summit organizers. The conference room was already occupied when they arrived. A group of senior diplomats and security officials from both species looked up as they entered. Among them, to Liana's shock, Commander Thorne. "Commander!" she exclaimed, momentarily forgetting diplomatic protocol in her surprise. "You survived." Thorne rose, his deep red scales gleaming under the conference room lights, his expression revealing a rare smile. "As did you, cultural attaché. Well done." "Your message indicated you were presumed lost with the ship," Liana said, regaining her composure. "A necessary deception," Thorne explained. "After ensuring your evacuation with the data crystal, I departed via a separate pod. My presence needed to remain unknown until we could determine the extent of the conspiracy." Director Caney gestured for everyone to be seated. "Now that we're all present, it's time to examine this evidence that has cost so many lives." Liana placed the data crystal on the conference table, where it caught the light, its facets glimmering with encoded information. "Commander Thorne entrusted this to me before the attack on the Sunscale," she explained. "It contains evidence of a conspiracy involving weapons manufacturers from both our civilizations." Thorne nodded, producing a security key that would unlock the crystal's encryption. "What cultural attaché Liana carries is the culmination of a joint intelligence operation spanning 2 years. We identified a pattern of sabotage against the peace process that could not be explained by normal political opposition. Following the trail led to an unexpected discovery," Alex added, smoothly integrating his narrative with Thorne's. "Major weapons contractors from both civilizations have been secretly collaborating to ensure the treaty fails. War profits them. Peace threatens their dominance." The crystal was connected to the conference room's secure system, and its contents began to display on the large screen, dominating one wall. Financial records, communication logs, identities of compromised officials, a web of corruption and conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of both governments. "This explains the persistent obstacles we've encountered in the negotiations," observed a senior human diplomat. "Leaked documents, apparent protocol violations, even the manufactured border incidents last quarter. All orchestrated to maintain tension and prevent meaningful progress toward peace," Thorne confirmed. For the next several hours, they presented the evidence in detail, with Liana and Alex recounting their experiences on Zartax, the crash, the mercenaries, the clear attempt to prevent the crystal from reaching the summit. As they spoke, Liana noticed the growing shock and anger among the assembled officials as the full extent of the conspiracy became clear. "The mercenaries who pursued us used Terran intelligence jamming protocols," Alex explained, directing his comments to Director Caney. "Suggesting infiltration within our own organization." Caney's expression hardened. "I've already identified several suspects based on this evidence. They're being quietly contained as we speak. Similar measures are being implemented within the Imperium's security apparatus," Thorne added. "The conspirators will find their influence rapidly diminishing." As the meeting progressed, decisions were made with remarkable unity. Joint investigation teams established, security protocols enhanced, and, most significantly, a commitment to resume the peace negotiations with renewed determination. "The treaty talks will reconvene tomorrow," announced the lead Draconian negotiator, an elder whose silvered scales marked her advanced age and status. "With additional transparency measures to prevent further sabotage." "This conspiracy sought to keep our civilizations in conflict for profit," added her human counterpart. "The most fitting response is to accelerate our path to peace." The meeting concluded with a sense of cautious optimism. As the officials filed out, Director Caney approached Alex and Liana, who had remained seated at the conference table. "Operative Alex," he said formally, "your actions on Zartax exceeded expectations. The successful delivery of this evidence may have saved the peace process." "Thank you, Director," Alex replied, "though I had considerable help." He glanced at Liana with unmistakable warmth. "So I observe," Caney said dryly. Then, more seriously, "your request for reassignment to the Diplomatic Security Liaison Office is being processed. Given recent events, I anticipate approval." Alex's expression revealed nothing, but Liana felt a surge of surprise, and something warmer. He had already requested reassignment to a position that would keep him connected to diplomatic circles. To her, "Cultural attaché Liana," Caney continued, turning to her, "it has been educational to observe your cooperation with my operative. Perhaps there is hope for this treaty after all. Individuals often find common ground before governments do." "Director," Liana replied diplomatically. After Caney departed, Liana and Alex were left alone in the conference room. The events of the past days, the danger, the revelations, the uncertain future, hung between them. "You requested reassignment," Liana observed, breaking the silence. Alex met her gaze directly. "I did. Before we even left Zartax." "Why?" she asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "Because some connections are worth exploring," he said simply. "Even if they cross species lines. Even if they challenge traditions." Liana considered his words. Feeling the weight of her own traditions, the draconian emphasis on lineage, on maintaining cultural separation, on prescribed paths of honor and duty. "My family has 17 generations of warrior tradition," she said finally. "I broke that tradition to become a diplomat. Perhaps," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "perhaps I am not averse to challenging tradition further." The smile that spread across Alex's face was like Zartax's sunrise, warm and full of promise. "I was hoping you might say something like that. The Diplomatic Liaison Office would benefit from your experience," Liana continued, maintaining formal language even as her meaning became more personal. "And I find our collaborative effectiveness worthy of continued exploration." "Very diplomatically phrased," Alex noted, his smile deepening. "Allow me to be more direct. I want to see where this goes, Liana. Whatever this is between us." His honesty, so characteristic of him, deserved equal candor in return. "As do I," she acknowledged, "though the path will not be simple." "The best paths rarely are," Alex replied. He reached across the table, his hand open, an invitation rather than a presumption. After a moment's hesitation, Liana placed her hand in his, scaled orange against human skin, a physical bridge between their different worlds. The contact sent a pleasant warmth through her, a connection that transcended the merely physical. To new traditions, Alex suggested softly. To peace, Leanna countered, her draconian smile appearing. In all its forms. 6 months later, the Grand Chamber of Proxima Station's central diplomatic hub was filled to capacity. Representatives from every major spacefaring civilization had gathered to witness the historic signing of the peace treaty between the Draconian Imperium and the Terran Alliance, an agreement 3 centuries in the making. Leanna stood at attention in her formal diplomatic attire, elaborate robes in the traditional colors of her lineage, modified slightly to incorporate elements of Terran diplomatic design. Beside her, Alex wore the formal uniform of the newly established Joint Security Commission, the insignia of both civilizations displayed with equal prominence on his collar. As the respective leaders of their governments approached the treaty table, Leanna felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The conspiracy had been unraveled, its architects facing justice in both judicial systems. The peace process had proceeded with renewed transparency and determination. And something else had grown alongside it, something personal and unprecedented. The treaty was signed with appropriate ceremony, the assembled dignitaries applauding as 3 centuries of conflict formally ended. But for Leanna, the most significant moment came afterward, during the celebration that followed. Alex found her near one of the observation windows, where Proxima's star cast golden light across the assembled guests. Cultural attaché, he greeted her with formal playfulness. Or should I say, Deputy Director of Interspecies Relations. My new title still feels strange, Leanna admitted. Her promotion, a recognition of her role in securing the treaty, had come with expanded responsibilities and influence within the diplomatic corps. You've earned it, Alex said simply. Then, glancing around to ensure a moment of privacy, he added more softly, though I admit I'm particularly pleased about the interspecies relations aspect of your work. Leanna's inner eyelids flickered with amusement. Your new position as Liaison Security Director ensures we will collaborate frequently, she observed. Professionally and otherwise. Alex agreed. He reached for her hand, a gesture that had become familiar and welcome over the past months. I've been meaning to ask you something. Yes, Leanna prompted when he hesitated. In Draconian culture, Alex said carefully, is there a formal process for acknowledging this? He gestured between them. What we've been building. Leanna felt a surge of warmth at his question, his continued respect for her culture, his desire to honor her traditions, even as they created something new together. There is a formal courtship ritual, she acknowledged. Though it has never been performed between a Draconian and a human. Would you consider being the first? Alex asked, his twilight blue eyes holding hers steadily. The question, simple yet profound in its implications, deserved careful consideration. What they were contemplating would challenge conventions, raise eyebrows, perhaps even create diplomatic complications. Yet in the moment of peace they had helped create. Perhaps there was room for one more boundary to be crossed. I would, Leanna said finally. Though you should know that Draconian courtship involves formal declarations before one's lineage elders. My family's warrior tradition makes them formidable assessors of potential mates. Rather than appearing intimidated, Alex smiled. I look forward to meeting them. After all, I've already faced mercenaries and conspirators alongside you. How much more challenging could your family be? Leanna laughed, the full, melodious draconian laugh that few humans ever heard, but which had become familiar to Alex. Your confidence is either admirable or foolhardy, she told him affectionately. A fine line I've been walking since we met, he replied, squeezing her hand gently. Around them, the celebration of peace continued. Draconian and human diplomats mingling with growing ease. Centuries of mistrust beginning to dissolve in the face of shared purpose and understanding. Their personal journey had mirrored this larger reconciliation, proving that differences could become strengths when approached with openness and respect. To new beginnings, Alex said softly, echoing the toast being raised throughout the chamber. To unexpected journeys, Leanna added, her draconian smile matching his human one, different in form, but identical in meaning. Together, they turned to rejoin the celebration, their hands remaining joined, a small but profound symbol of the peace they had helped create, and the future they would help build. A future where a draconian diplomat and a human intelligence operative could find common ground, shared purpose, and perhaps most surprisingly of all, love that transcended the boundaries of species and tradition. In the vastness of space, on a station built for reconciliation, they had discovered that the most powerful diplomacy began not with treaties or negotiations, but with two individuals willing to see beyond appearance to the person within. And in that discovery lay the true promise of lasting peace.